This picture has been doing the rounds of the internet since at least 2015 as far as I can find, and it's all about that little blue car down in the corner. And basically the question is, what is it? And in this video I'm going to debunk some of the common suggestions. I'm going to talk you through the logic I think of who possibly designed it, who may well have commissioned it, and finally what chassis could be under it. So keep watching and I'll explain to you my logic. This picture was originally published in the 1967 book Buses, Trolleys and Trams by Chas S. Dunbar. The picture itself was taken in 1962 and it was taken in Oxford Street in London. Of course the routemasters probably give that away. Now, to give you some idea of the scale of the debate that's gone on over this car, on Pistonheads, one of the most popular forums, there is one thread there on it which is got 135 pages and 2,686 comments, and probably by the time you're watching this video that number has more than likely gone up. Now I think we can make a few basic assumptions regarding this car. One is it's not out there on the internet anywhere. If it had been, somebody would have found it by now after all this sort of publicity about it. I think the other obvious thing is this car has got to be a one-off. If there would have been more than one, you know, at least one you think would have survived, would have been photographed at a later date and come to light. Next thing is, I think this car was probably destroyed not long after this picture was taken. And the reason I think that is, again, if it had survived for any period of time, there would have been more pictures and somebody by now would have come up with something that, you know, suggested that it was still about, or more details of it. And finally, and it's a bit more than an assumption, we know this is quite a small car. On that Pistonheads thread, a lot of people have done various trigonometry and similar things to work out the scale of the car. And you can see by where the driver sat, he sat quite far back with his backside against the rear axle. So it is quite a petite little car. First off, I want to debunk some of the most common suggestions for this car. And the one that seems to come up more often than not is the Sunbeam Alpine. And also its derivatives. There was a Harrington Coupe and also a TS4, I think sort of Le Mans car. And none of them sort of fit anywhere close. I think that Alpine thing has come from the rear wing. You can see by the shape of it, it's very similar to the early Sunbeam Alpines. But the thing that kills it for me is when you look at the picture closely, you can see that car's got a flip front. And without having some kind of space frame under it, it wouldn't have a flip front with a Sunbeam Alpine back to it. The next one up, and this one was pushed forward by Supercar Blondie, so quite a well-known and very popular American-based channel, I believe, and website, who said they solved the mystery and it was a Saab Sonnet. No, it isn't. You know, come on. You know, you obviously have a vacancy for a researcher there, so yeah, give us a call because that was poor. Sorry. Next one, Daimler Dart, and again, I think that's down to the rear wing shape. The Daimler Dart was very similar to the Sunbeam Alpine on that view. The Daimler Dart is a longer car as well. It's got a 92-inch wheelbase, which is longer than I believe we're looking at on this one. And then finally, there's the Alf Garnett post, which I've seen has been repeated in other places. This was on Pistonheads again, and it gives a long story of somebody who supposedly was knew the person that had built the car, and he gave a long plausible story, but I think it was a bit too plausible, if that makes sense. The car allegedly had RAF 33 as a registration number, and the car itself was supposedly based on a pre-war Ford Model 7Y, and the RAF 33 number wasn't issued until May 53. So something doesn't tie up there. Allegedly, according to this Alf Garnett post, the car had he'd last heard of it in the mid-90s in the Bournemouth area, and it had last been on the road in 1977. If it had been on the road for 15 years, somebody else would have taken the picture of that car, and there would be some record of it, and there isn't. So, on balance of probability, I don't think that's true. And that was a single post. They've never replied to it. I'm not convinced by it. And the final thing is that there's been a lot of suggestions that this has just been CGI'd or photoshopped or whatever. This was 1967 with a 1962 picture. Give yourself a slap. Right, moving on. So if it's not out there on the internet, we need to go old school. So for younger viewers, this is called a book. And this one's from 1962, and I thought, well, there's a fair chance we might have an odd picture of a motor show or something like that, but no, I've gone cover to cover in that one. Nothing like it in there at all. The other suggestion about this car, which does for me hold some water, is it was some kind of kit car. Now, for kit cars, we go to another book, and this one is the Steve Hull A to Z of kit cars, basically every UK kit car since 1949. Now, I've been through this, and there are a couple that look in the style of the car we're looking for, but they're not it itself. There's a Concordette 2, and this was based on the Ford 8 or the Ford 10, and this was built between 1961 and 1962, and there were 10 of them produced, so if it was that, there would obviously be more around. And the other one was the Debonair, which again has that same sort of straight waistline-ish effect down the side. There were around about 65 of these produced between 1959 and 1963. However, while I was browsing Mr. Hull's book, I did discover there was a company called CRS that produced replacement chassis for the E93A Ford. And they would produce them in a shorter chassis length, which might suit our problem with having a short wheelbase. And they would also produce it with upgraded suspension. But this was around the time this car was produced, like sort of 61, 62. But it's not impossible. This could be the underpinnings to our car. If this car was a one-off, it could well have been put together by a Coachbuilder. Now, I'm going to get myself roasted for this. A lot of the one-off designs and low-volume designs in the 50s and early 60s weren't, how should we say, should have spent longer on the design table rather than going into production as they did. Now, one that was an exception to that rule was there was a company called Williams and Pritchard, and they were proper old-school coach builders. They worked a lot in aluminium and then took on fiberglass as it came along. They actually did a lot of the early prototyping for Lotus, and then they took their moulds from the aluminium bodies that William and Pritchard came up with. Now, I think it's a reasonable thought. The only thing is, there were a lot of people working for Williams and Pritchard, and you would think, despite the fact it's now a long time owned, sort of further on, that one of those people would have remembered that car. It's not impossible that, you know, everyone that was involved with it has forgotten about it or sadly passed away, but I'm not convinced that it would be one of theirs. But hey, I could be wrong. The interesting thing is, recently this Triumph TR3A based car came out, which was built by Williams and Pritchard, and it's got the Gullwing doors that feature on that blue car that we're looking for. But I'm going to come back to those Gullwings in just a minute. So let's look at some of the particular styling points on this car and see where it takes us. So you've got those rear fins, which is why everybody jumps on the Sunbeam Alpine and Daimler Dart theory. You've got that wraparound screen, which is very unusual at that time, and various suggestions have been it possibly came from a Vauxhall of that period, maybe the rear screen out of some kind of hardtop, or even the rear screen from a Nash Metropolitan. The other thing is that though the Gullwing doors, and you can see the outline of them in the roof. And I think that line you can see down the front by the lady, that's not the hinge point for the door, that's the edge of the flip front. And the final bit is those hooded headlamps, and that was the thing that was sort of was bugging me, I suppose. I knew I'd seen it somewhere before, and all the cars I looked at with this research of kit cars, I couldn't think where I'd seen it. But eventually we have got Cars That Time Forgot by Giles Chapman from 1997. And here is the Michelotti Triumph TR3. Now, as you can see, on that, we've got all those design cues, bar one. We've got the hooded headlamps, we've got the wraparound screen, we've got those rear fins, and we've got that sort of steady line down the side, which features on that car as well. So what's the story behind this special? Well, the main character is a chap called Captain Raymond Flowers. And he was part of the Flowers Brewery family, and he'd been working in Egypt producing sort of small cars for the locals, but decided to move into building sports cars. And he created the Type 2 SR6, which was an aluminium bodied space frame chassis 2-litre engine sports car. And So this shows this guy had the nous, the resources, and the abilities to put together a sports car. Now, how he then gets involved with this Michelotti designed TR3 is that in 1956, Egypt took control of the Suez Canal, and as a Brit, he wasn't particularly popular in Egypt anymore, so came back to the UK, and he, having kicked off the Frisky micro car and then passed it on to a company called Henry Meadows, he was still involved, but Henry Meadows took it to production. He then decided he wanted to get into building sports cars again. So he approached Standard Triumph to say, can I have a TR3 chassis, an engine, running gear, and I want to put my own body on it. They weren't overly keen, and so they agreed to do it only if he could produce the car within 3 months. So within 10 days, they shown Standard Triumph some designs. They selected the one they wanted, and in 3 months, the car turned up. Now, Flowers had kept very quiet about who the designer was, and the reason was that they wanted obviously to keep that to themselves. But Standard Triumph, actually quite impressed with what was produced, managed to find out who the designer was, and basically in the future went to them direct. So Michelotti designed the Herald, the Stag, the Spitfire, and so on. So this obviously left the Flowers out in the cold. Now, how had Flowers got in contact with Michelotti in Italy to have this car built by Vignale Coachworks? Well, the connection was actually Raymond Flowers' brother, Neville, who was actually a friend with Michelotti. So that was where the connection came. But of course, this still doesn't answer the question about the Gullwing doors. So that's coming next. So in 1956, Michelotti went off and did a design for a Swiss company called Ghia Agile. And they produced a car based on the Lotus 11. They called it the Lotus 1100 Le Mans, and as you see, it's a hard top, but it's got a lot of those design cues we're seeing from Michelotti at the time. In particular, it's got the rear fins, it's got the wraparound screen, but it's also got the doors, which are now starting to extend into the roof, almost a bit like Gullwings. So back to the Frisky microcar. The Flowers have handed over production of it to Henry Meadows, and they're continuing to look after the design side. So they go back to their old contact, Giovanni Michelotti, who gets Vignale to create the design he's come up with for this microcar, and it gets launched at the 1957 Geneva Motor Show. And guess what? It's got Gullwing doors. That's the design cue we've been looking for, and Michelotti went on to do more Gullwings in the future, and I know a lot of other designers did, but we're ticking a lot of boxes with Michelotti designs here. So where does this take us? Well, to summarise my thought process, I think this car shows a lot of the design cues of Giovanni Michelotti, those hooded headlamps, Gullwing doors, wraparound screen, those rear fins. So I've got a fair thought that he was the designer of this car, and compared to a lot of the stuff that was being knocked out around that time, this is a very sort of cohesive design. And I've seen a lot of comments in the forums that I've looked at that this looks Italian or at least European in some way. And the other thing is, who built it? Well, it could have been built in Britain, but we know there was an awful lot of coach builders in Italy at that time, and it looks like Michelotti was working with quite a lot of them. He worked with the well-known ones like Bertoni and Ghia and Farina, and if it had been one of those, I think we would have found out the history of this car. But he also worked with some lesser-known ones like Alemanno, Cianari, Monterosa, Viotti, and Fisori. Yes, I did have to read that from a list because a lot of those I've never heard of, and I can find very little about them online. And it's quite possible some guy in his late 80s, early 90s is sitting in Italy, knows all about this car, but the trail is lost in translation. And of course, we've got Captain Flowers, who appears to have the resources, the will and ambition to build sports cars. So he looks like a likely guy who could have actually pushed this project forward. And finally, what about a chassis under it? Well, that's a very difficult one to identify, isn't it? There was the TR3 chassis from that original special that Michelotti did. There was the CRS chassis from the E93A. There was the Lotus 11 chassis, or possibly any other mix or pre or just post-war chassis could have been used. I hope you enjoyed that journey through my thought process on this car, and I'd really like to hear your thoughts on it in the comments. You may think I'm completely mad, or you may feel there's some sort of truth in the ideas that I've come up with. But regardless, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Of the internet since the 1967 book